conflict in face-to-face communication can be very different than when we engage in conflict in computer-mediated communication. Specifically, we're going to be looking at email. There's a really great article by Friedman and Carell that looks at conflict differences between face-to-face communication and email, and looks at the qualities of each, and then talks about the ways that email can exasperate conflict. And I want to talk about those, and I also want to talk about a recent article that I read related to conflict via email through actually an analysis that was done of emails with people that were engaging in eBay conflict disputes. So, in the Friedman-Carell article, it talks about the qualities of face-to-face communication. The qualities are co-presence, visibility, audibility, cotemporality, simultaneity, and sequentiality. So what are these things? And these particular qualities of face-to-face communication begin with co-presence. That is, you're in the same place at the same time, okay? You can understand that being in the same environment and seeing what the other person sees and all that has a particular quality to it. You just can't capture any other way. Visibility is being able to see the other person, being able to see their nonverbal cues. So not just the environment that they're in, but actually the other person. Being able to see their eye contact, being able to see their body posture, being able to see how close or how far away they are from you, their proxemics. Audibility is being able to hear their voice. That is being able to hear their tone, changes in tone, being able to hear the rate at which they speak, and all that. Cotemporality is to hear an utterance just as it is produced. To actually hear something as it's said, when it's said. Simultaneity is being both sender and receiver at the same time, and that's unique to face-to-face communication and maybe phone communication. Sequentiality is turn-taking is in order. That is, you don't get turn-taking out of order because in face-to-face you can't rewind, stop, pause, fast forward, any of that kind of stuff. In email, co-presence is negated because you're not in the same place that the other person is, which means you're not going to read the email in the same place that they produced the email. You're going to see different things. You're going to be distracted by different things in your environment. You don't have visibility, so you have to imagine what the other person looked like while they were writing the email, what their facial expressions might have been. Same thing with audibility. You can only imagine it. You don't really know what their tone of voice was. You really don't know how fast or how slow they were speaking, or if they paused at certain points and really thought about what they were saying. Cotemporality is impossible. You can't hear something it is said, so you can really get the phrasing messed up when you read an email based on what someone produced, because when you read it you can put an emphasis in different places, you can phrase something with more emphasis than something else, you can pause in different places, and so you can really change the phrasing of the utterance whenever you read it. And then also simultaneity is hindered because you're not sender and receiver at the same time. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's great. I can focus more on the message that I'm sending, or I can focus more on the message that I'm receiving. But that also gives undue attention, in some cases, to the message that you're sending or receiving. And then finally, sequentiality is confused because you don't have to read a message in order. And in fact, if you're like me, I read most recent messages first and then I work my way kind of backwards, and that's just because that's the way my email program is set up, and so that's what I do. And in many cases, I'll read a message and someone is saying something about an email that they previously sent, and I'm not going to read that until after I read the message that they're talking about a previously sent email. And so you can really get sequentiality messed up. And then email has two qualities of its own, that is reviewability and revisability. Reviewability in that you can reread something as many times as you want to try and really get what the other person wants you to get out of it, or get something totally different. You also have revisability when you're writing an email, and that you can edit and you can revise it as many times as you want to. Now, think about this. If you know somebody has reviewability and you know somebody has revisability, you might have misperceptions in terms of the time that they spend actually writing down and producing that email or revising it. You might have misperceptions about the intentionality of the words that they chose, the emphasis that they placed, and those sorts of things. You might have misconceptions about the message itself, because you might think that they had the ability to revise it in your rereading of it, and you may think, well, they should have been thinking about how I might interpret it this way or that way. And humor can be very difficult over email because you can't hear someone's tone of voice. And if someone reviews it over and over again, it may even lose that initial sense of humor that it may have originally had. And you can really exasperate emotions as you review something negative over and over again. You can reread it, and you can reread it, and you can reread it. And so you have growing frustration, and these can be precursors to negative spirals of conflict, which can be very difficult to resolve them. And the cases that were very interesting that I found over eBay and the conflicts that went on there, the conflict management system was completely online. And even though it was a third party that managed the conflict for eBay, a lot of people gave up on the conflict. The statistics were very high on people that just quit because of the amount of time involved in constructing these emails and then reviewing what the mediator was sending you and what the person who was in conflict with you was sending you. A lot of people gave up on the process. And even though people had a high sense of desire to engage in it because they had their eBay ratings on the line and they didn't want decreased eBay ratings because that would mean that other customers wouldn't buy for them, that seemed to not be enough to keep them in the conflict in some cases. That they would rather actually just give up and give up their rating in order to not have to deal with the constant back and forth of the email. And I'm not saying that you can't do conflict well over email or any other electronic channel. I'm just saying that it's different than in face-to-face. And most of our communication research that we've done is on face-to-face communication. It's not on these other channels of communication. And so therefore we don't know a lot about how to do conflict well or to manage it well and what some of the nuances are of these other channels. What we know primarily is about face-to-face. And so you're really treading in new waters as you're using different technologies to engage in conflict. And because of that, I don't have a whole lot of tips to give you, except to really guard against things like reviewability and revisability and some of the misperceptions related to those qualities. And as you're engaging in conflict management, really think about what you want to say, how you want to say it, and the different ways that it can be perceived. And something can be perceived very differently than the way you intended it.